pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you everybody for being here tonight. This is a special call meeting of the Chamblee Downtown Development Authority. We're here for consideration of action on assignment and related matters involving Peachtree Crossing LLC and Peachtree Station Holding LLC. Dan, why don't you give us a quick rundown on the documents and the status of them at this point, and then we'll talk about the main information after that.
There are two basic documents involved in the transaction. One is an assignment document, and the other, which has been requested, which we don't always do, is an estoppel certificate. These two documents have been negotiated, and they are very close to being in final form. We have some questions, not essential questions, come up this afternoon, and I'll need to take a look at it. And there will be one or two other pieces of paper connected to the closing of the transaction if it closes. The assignment document, as negotiated, makes a few changes to the bond documents themselves, not nearly as many as were requested, but some, which now I feel like are legal and are okay for the development party to enter into. The chair and I have discussed them, and I can review for the board what they are if you like. But none of them affect our essential interest in terms of the business deal that we made, which at this point revolves around the Whole Foods Corp. That's what we need to discuss. So if it is, if the board reaches a consensus on what the Whole Foods clause should look like, and we decide to make any changes, then I would need to draft that change. Otherwise, where we were before, where the chair is authorized in consultation with the council to sign these documents and allow the transaction to close.
So essentially, the documents are in a form where we can sign pending the discussion on the Whole Foods part of it. And we've done no
That's
part
what I
of
meant
it.
to say.
Right. Okay, so we have to talk about the Whole Foods name. We have to talk about the ability to change the name within the documents. We haven't talked about this yet publicly, so I'm going to want to hear from everybody on what the proposal is, that if 95% of the entirety of the Whole Foods chain changes names, that we would approve the change of name. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Was that 95% of the whole company or just Georgia?
The way that we originally proposed it was Georgia, because it could be that they split the names into quarters, like some chains have done. So we just said Georgia, which would be the most relevant.
Okay. So this doesn't say anything about the quality of the store or what's going to stay in there. So what we're talking about right now is literally the sign on the front of the store.
That is correct.
But they wouldn't have the ability to change the quality of the store that is in there.
That is correct. I mean, that first of all, well, I'll say that. I did bring a character witness. This is my son, Davis.
You couldn't tell.
Davis is working on his communication merit badge, so he joins us today to work on that, and so I appreciate y'all letting him see me. Please don't embarrass me. But that is correct. I mean, we want, right now, the idea is to change at 95% change. We don't want to be the only one that's Whole Foods, because then we'll be seen as sort of dragging behind. Obviously, the brand, they're not going to do anything to shoot themselves in the foot. It's a successful store. It's operating in a successful manner. We don't think they're going to change that. This is just a purely if they change the name on the door. Understand that there were some concerns raised about the operations internal. It's really hard for me to speak of that, but we know that the intention is to operate as a Class A specialty grocery store. What that looks like this year, we sort of know. What it looks like 7 years from now is the question, and we know that it's going to be the best of class because Amazon and Whole Foods, I think, bring that to pass. They've got a lot riding on this partnership.
Okay. And this is being driven by the prospective purchaser, which is the teacher's employee, the teacher's retirement pension fund. What is that?
Yeah, so New Mexico Teachers Pension Fund,
Right.
they obviously are buying this as a stable investment. Any purchase price effect, any change would really reflect badly on their income side. So they're paying us based on the potential, and we've shown with, bond counsel, how we can distribute them yearly a certain amount. And they basically said, well, that's great, except for, right, this is comfortable. I can tell my teacher's pension fund that this is great. However, if the name were to change to Amazon Prime Plus, operate in the same way, you guys could decide, and we don't think that you would, but you could, and certainly if this body was much different and had a negative view of either our company or the teacher's pension, or just had some axe to grind, they might say no, and therefore this investment, this conservative investment, would go in essence to zero. We're just trying to preclude that from happening by addressing some of the concerns that they have.
As I recall, the naming amendment does not say the name would have to be consistent with what the other 95% of the chain would have to be. So
that's a good catch. I mean, our intention is not to be different. Our intention is if they change the others, and this changes as a matter of consequence as part of their general business model, then you guys would accept that change. Now, I'm even open to the idea that you would bring it back and that it would not be unreasonably withheld. However we want to do it, what is most simple, and I think Jeff Montgomery can speak to whether or not they would accept that, but knowing that you guys would go ahead and say, look, we're just recognizing that if this happens, the intent is to continue to pay on this bond teacher's pension fund. That's not our intention to take that money away, but we addressed it like this in the beginning for a very specific purpose, and that is how it was addressed.
So what I propose that we do is slightly different than what's on the table right now. I would propose that if that I would propose it be a trigger, right? I would not propose that it be a change of discretion on the naming or the type of store that goes over to the pension fund. I would propose that if they hit that 95%, or for that matter, even 90%, it doesn't make any sense to just have the one last Whole Foods out there because 85% changed, But at the point when we reached that number, then we agreed in advance to permit that change, so long as the change is consistent with the other 90% of stores. But we do have to have something in there about the quality of the store staying the same as it is. So the quality of the overall line of groceries, the quality of the service, none of that can change. That needs to stay consistent. But I think if we can do that, then that would be, I think, a good win for us, because we don't want to force them into a bad spot.
Yeah.
And if truly 90% or 85% or whatever that number is are changing, well,
So
I would agree with that.
and I would just caveat it, and we're fine with all that. I would just caveat it to say that it operates consistently with the other 90% who are, because if we start looking at it independently, and somebody may say, well, I don't like the grapes that they have, right? And it has to be some measure that we know we can quantify. If the other stores are operating at this level, it's comparable and consistent.
The problem, though, is we cannot support the change of the store to a food line. And so if
Yeah,
for whatever
that's-
reason, and I understand, but once you've sold, you're not involved anymore, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so 2 years down the road, they change the name, and Amazon Prime becomes associated with something, I shouldn't have said food line, I don't mean that it's all food line, but it becomes well, whatever it is, it becomes such a lesser quality store, that's sure. But that's a corporate decision I don't want to be involved in. We don't, if that's what they want to change it, I'm fine with the naming change only. A quality change is something that I really can't get behind.
Right.
And so I just want to make sure that we don't put ourselves into another sort of mire by creating this change, which is a sort of negligible mark for what is quality. So as long as it's consistent with the top end of the Whole Foods brand change, or Jeff Montgomery, do you have any thoughts? I mean,
That's about the best you can do, is to put it consistent with the first class tier of other grocery stores in the chain. That's all you can really do, because otherwise you're.
But that doesn't necessarily address that if Amazon decides that they don't want to be in the premium grocery business anymore and take all of their stores to 365s plus 10,000 square feet of parcel storage or whatever. I mean, and I'm not an industry. Is there a typical industry term for Class A
specialty retail? I mean, is that the industry?
It
trend?
is, but when you come up with when we go back to them and we say, hey, we got this concession, and they say, well, what does this mean? There's plenty of people that know what that means, but when we really define what it means, it really is subjective. What's Class A to you is Class B. Ingles might be Class A to someone living in
So there's
Georgia.
no industry standard for Class A?
No, there really
No
isn't.
such thing.
Are there consultants, are consultants who can come in and look at the new operation and say that this is not compared to the other store, but a top-tier specialty grocery operation? Is there somebody in the industry who can do that?
There's really no way to define it. It's branding, it's pricing, but there's about 5 million variables that you could look at and make an argument one way or the other.
Is there somebody that we trust that we could designate? I mean, it's a third party.
I can say this is a Class A operation, this is a Class B.
Is there a national list like done by the Wall Street Journal or done in Bradstreet or anything?
No.
No.
I
What
mean,
we're
it's hard to go into a consulting group, McKinsey, or there's, they have other.
The large real estate brokers, Johnson, the CBRE, Cushman Wakefield.
Well, I
They
mean,
know whether they say it or not.
certainly one of the ideas is that if they did that, the property value, in my opinion, would go down. So we could say that it has no detriment on the property value, which is a standard that we could do in appraisal before and appraisal after. That would be
That's very,
something.
I think I'm making this too complicated. A scenario you're talking about would mean that it would be owned by someone else, and we're going to yank the abatement if it's owned by someone else. What you're talking about is Amazon saying, we're going to create an environment that is subpar. Why would any company do that? I mean, what scenario are you talking about where Amazon is going to change the stores to something lesser?
Maybe
What they're
Amazon
operating.
really liked the 365 concept. and-
But we just said if they change to the 365 concept, then we yank the thing. That's
No, that's not. what
We
we
don't
said.
have a measure- we
If
don't have
they
a
change all
measure
the
that.
names to 365, or 90% of the names to 365.
But they can't change the store to a smaller footprint,
Yeah, so
correct?
we've already put in the document, and I'm
It's
sorry.
going to have to stay 45,000 square foot, right?
Well, anything above 40, I
Or
think.
40, whatever that number
But
is.
they could keep the store at 30,000 or 40,000 square feet by reducing the grocery to 30,000 square feet and selling, being a parcel pickup.
But if they do that in 95% of the stores in Georgia, how are we, I mean, that's what you're going to get. You
Right.
can't force the
But what
company
we
to.
wanted
It was
was
a premium grocery store.
right, we would have funded something less.
So tell me another premium grocery store. That's what I'm saying. If they make that change, you're not going to have a Whole Foods type store.
But if that's the case, then we shouldn't be funding something that doesn't exist any longer. The only thing I've come up with is the Fresh Market in Dunwich. All right, and that's a far smaller store than any Whole Foods store is, admittedly, right? But if somebody come and said, we want to put a Fresh Market in, would that have the same connection to Whole Foods? And I don't think so. And if they came in and said, we want to put in a Super Publix or something, I'm kind of making stuff up now, but, there's a certain connection that came with that entirely full-service grocery. So if we're going to be willing to change the name, we need to make sure that what we're paying for, what we bought is what we paid for. Otherwise, we pay too much.
So I do think this standard measure of appraisal, which means that by the name change and by the operation of the store, there is a real market value change because you paid for the tax roll, right? And that tax roll is generating jobs, and certainly there's a panache that's unmeasurable. But if they do change it in a way that does disservice to the value, that's testable, right? 95% of the stores change names, and by the way, wow, now they're running bulk products out of it. That's more industrial, it's not going to be as valuable.
How long would it take? Right, the value of the property is based on the income based on the leases. So if they changed it, it would take a period of time for those current leases to expire and then new leases to be negotiated. Is that a year? Is that 5 years? What's the average? What's the general lease?
So the average lease term on this center is just under 9 years. So we've got some long-term.
So they could change it next year, and none of those leases would expire prior to the expiration of our deal, so the value of the property wouldn't change at all.
About value of the business,
Okay,
as opposed to value of the property.
exactly.
There are business evaluators now. I'm not, this just occurs to me, so I'm not.
Is that going to get us sued?
So would we need a specifically grocery evaluator, or would we
Well, the
just a
concept-
business evaluator?
The
period?
concept is if you, I'm trying to think of it, well, if you're Tiffany's, your business is gonna be more valuable than Dan's Jewelry Store.
Yeah.
So if a Tiffany's changes its name to Dan's Jewelry Store, the value of that business goes.
Right.
How long does it take for the value of that business to change?
No idea.
A year or two?
You could set a period of time and have that be the measured period of time. It doesn't, there's no matching period, but obviously if Tiffany's becomes Dan's, that's instantly recognizable as less valuable.
So you were asking if there's not a consultant that could come in, so would that not be the way to do that?
The question is whether the DDA would be willing to take a decline in the value of the business as a proxy for this is a cheaper, lower quality grocery store, therefore it's worth less. If that equation is okay, then the business value is easy to find.
Seems like that's about the only way we can do it if we want some kind of surety.
Seems like that's a way to get us sued.
I'd-
Because it's not,
It seems like we're making this more, the more we're trying to simplify this, the more we're making this
which is why I'm not,
very complex.
it doesn't seem like there's an easy way to do
We want to find
it.
it based on a 95% change in the stores statewide or nationwide is a very easy thing to quantify, but getting into the intrinsic value of the brand, that's just.
I think,
Go ahead.
I think we've already accomplished what we wanted to accomplish when we did the original deal and specified that it had to be Whole Foods. Because we wanted the very best, and we got the very best, and what we wanted to happen in Chamblee just happened. It's brought other great businesses to here, so moving forward, I don't see that it's gonna be that big a deal.
What do we do in the worst case scenario when we give this approval and they sell the center tomorrow and then by Friday they change the name and change the nature of the store to something else and then we're still paying 12 years or 11 years?
It's not, it's a dollar.
Well, it's still, but the capital is based on 10 or 11 years,
There's an
right?
outside term to the lease.
Correct. Okay, so, it's $11 million of tax benefit that we're giving, and now we no longer have Whole Foods. And so what do we have next? If we pass it on its face right now, we allow them to change the name, right, and that's it, right? How do we know what we have tomorrow, and how do we justify that to the public? That's the question.
The counterpoint to that though is there's nothing we can do about it anyways. If they change it to Amazon Foods tomorrow, there's nothing we can do to affect the name.
But under the current,
That is the power that we've got.
I guess what I come back to is under the current terms, they can change it. They just have to come to us for approval, of that change.
Which is why the difference of who's got the discretion makes, that's really what it comes down to.
I'd like the discretion. You
Okay.
funded it.
Well,
So then we really don't need to address it, because if they've got to come back to us to ask in the first place, we can
So
decide.
that's what they'd really like to avoid.
that,
But
And
I'm not
it
sure
goes
that's-
to our financial partners, use this as worth zero. They're willing to put, this is a riskless transaction, and the pensioner's money is not something to be trifled with. So to invest in something that might, under a ridiculous scenario, change names, and then this board is completely reconfigured, and they say, hey, I forget what y'all talked about, yeah, we got the benefit, but you changed the name, I'm gonna save Chamblee some money. That's their concern, is that it's yanked, and you're right, we've already spent the money. Nothing affects nothing affects Whole Foods. They change it, Amazon changes it, the only person that you're yanking money from is me, and I've already spent the money, right? I spent it the day that we could, we wouldn't have been able to close the loan without y'all stepping in, so that's what we're trying to do, we're just trying to bridge that gap.
I understand that, and I appreciate that, and that's why I'm trying to figure out a way to get to where we can have a trigger, but we have to have a quality measure in there of some sort.
Let's go back to your scenario that you just outlined a minute ago. So we close our deal, and then 2 or 3 days later, the new company changes the name, and then potentially the value of the business goes down. Okay, you have already automatically allowed the change to go through because it met the 95% threshold or 90% threshold. We're here now, okay? You at that point could begin a procedure and bring in somebody and value the thing, as these two guys have proposed. Value the business, see how much it's, see if it's decreased by a certain percentage over what was before. If so, you get to yank it.
I think that sounds like a great
I
advice.
think that just gets sued. I understand everything that everybody's saying. I'm having a difficult time because Whole Foods is so unique. It almost would have been a lot easier if it had been a Publix. There are stores comparable to a Publix I can think of off the top of my head. I cannot think of anything comparable to Whole Foods off the top of my head.
Well, and please understand that the scenario that we're talking about is outrageous. None of us expected, really.
Agreed.
I mean, the store is super successful, right? We know that it's operating successfully. It's open. It's brought a lot of economic boom to this area as part of the strategy that y'all have employed, and we're here because of y'all. So you have in many ways benefited already. The tax rolls of adjacent properties have gone up. So, in this scenario, 95% of the stores change hands. You guys are still a Whole Foods. I'm not sure that benefits you either, quality or not quality.
Other side of the coin, what if they do change the name and they decide to up the quality?
Right? Yeah.
Well, assuming right now they would come to us for approval. We wouldn't just approve an increase in quality.
Right.
How do you know? How do you know that 5 people on the board 3 years from now go, I don't like the new
But
Whole
here's
Foods?
the thing.
In the scenario, one of them said, I just want to save the city some money, I'm going to yank that.
I understand. Yeah.
I kind of, in Ronnie's camp, I think there's a lot that's been accomplished.
There has
I
been.
don't have personally much reverence for Whole Foods, I don't shop there, but.
But the question I have to answer though is, what if 6 years from now, when that name's been changed for 5 years, and we're still doing a tax statement on it, how are we justifying to the public what we did?
The same way we justified the public why we did it in the first
Yeah,
place.
I think arguably you could look at a number of factors and say, there was a huge environmental factor that played into this development. From my understanding, that was a big part of the conversation of, why does a private developer need a tax abatement? Because there's greater cost above and beyond to abate it at a contaminated site that may not otherwise have been developed on the private market as it is. So I think you could arguably say that there's a number of reasons beyond just capturing the Whole Foods brand within the city.
I think it's fair to meet in the middle. We're not saying you can just change it to whatever you want, whenever you want. We're saying we're putting in these numbers that say 90% of the stores have to change in Georgia. The quality thing, I just don't know how you make that measurable. I think it's too difficult. So,
Well,
I just can't. Yes, there could be a worst case scenario where the quality goes down, but again, like Robert said, we've accomplished.
But our duty runs only to taxpayers. That's our sole duty. And we paid for something.
But do you have a quality measure on the apartments that you have incentivized? Is there something that
Yes,
says?
in fact, we did.
So how do you gauge that? If they go to a
We have
dollar
a
eighty
special rights
five,
to go there and do it, then we have the ability to fully abatement if we're not satisfied.
and how does that run? So let's do the same thing.
It hasn't happened yet.
But what is the context? If it is
We
valued.
have in some cases a specific list of amenities.
With the apartment, we had specific amenities that we said you have to include, and that was in the contract. With one deal. With another deal, we didn't have anything.
But remembering that all deals are different, and this deal involves a brand name as a center of the community, whereas that apartment complex didn't involve that. The apartment complex involved a car dealership moving out, which itself is a very intangible thing. And Trackside, of course, brought a certain number of jobs of a certain amount of, that's probably the only measurable thing, the only truly measurable.
Didn't treat it like that. We know, with the stuff, we showed outside of the abatement, the money the city was collecting from this project, from jobs and other business fees, make that the second measurable. If you want to put a measurable, if you're going to change the name, 90% of the stores have to change, and the complex still has to provide X number, whatever that is.
Do you have a clause in your
You're
lease?
still providing for the city.
Yeah.
Is there a clause in the lease that they have to remain in operation throughout the duration of the lease? Okay, so they could go dark.
Yeah, they are.
As long as they're paying.
But as long as they don't change their name, good.
Okay.
They do, we can pull it.
No, if they go dark, you pull the abatement and, I'll hand you all my keys to my house. Sorry, Davis. I feel like- No, but I mean, that is a scenario that, I mean, that's partially,
Right.
we've got to, but here, so 90% of the names in Georgia change, and we have a independent broker. If you guys so demand, you feel like there's a question, then we go to an independent Atlanta brokerage firm and get their opinion as to whether this is the best in class of that Amazon brand. So that it's not hey, we went into two different, one's an Aldi version and another is the Trader Joe's, which are both the same company, right? You would want to make sure that you're the highest of that brand, and we have some independent mechanism. So 90% test, first of all, if it's only 80% and you change it, we can pull it. We would have to come and get your approval. If it's 90%, then it says, hey, if we think it's the best in class, and that measurement could be certified, if we don't believe it's the case, and we call it up and we say, look, we need a presentation, we would have a third party present that it was the best in class of that brand.
All right, so,
That sounds reasonable.
hold on, proposal on the table right now, it's still not the best of that brand. And here's the thing, what if Whole Foods becomes the quality of Piggly Wiggly next week? Take the extreme example, they changed the name, they changed the quality of Piggly Wiggly, and we're still paying $11 million in the course of the next 10
You're not,
years.
your abatement means 4 now.
Yeah,
4.5, you're,
it's
No.
4.5, yeah, it is.
So I have a
It
total
was
of
7.5 total, but 3
425.
they would have gotten from the brownfield anyways.
so we paid $4.5 million for the ability to control the quality of the property. That's what we paid for.
You paid for the tax boost to the community, the Whole Foods effect, which is radiating, which we're seeing. And so the question is,
We
6
paid
years.
for more than that, I'm sorry, we paid for more than just that. We paid for taking a piece of property that could have sat there for another decade as a brownfield
Oh,
and turned it into something
call
very.
that $3 or $4 million worth, and then you still have the difference between that and the actual.
You know, I'm starting to be swayed by the arguments. I think if we give it a trigger of 90% to the best in class for Amazon.
But what I'm saying is I don't think we should tie it to Amazon. I think it should be best in class, period.
So that
You're
would,
tying it to something that we don't know.
Well, what we've heard is that there's not really a way to quantify best in class.
There are
And
always
then there's no one else that's in
Right.
that
I
class,
understand
which
that.
means that
Then we
if
could,
Amazon does
again,
drop
that's
in
where
class,
that's where we were.
then our society is dropping.
I get it,
As long as it's
but it's,
public, you know.
like, again, that's what we have the ability to decide whether to pull the abatement or not. That's still the triggering event. The question is, when are we gonna pull the abatement? And if they're asking us what we're gonna do for it, if we've given tax dollars, or if we're giving taxpayers on an ongoing basis, we damn well better get what we bargained for here. And if there was environmental stuff that was gonna be covered, well, that's already covered, and I get that. So we're talking about the difference, the delta between the brownfield value and the naming convention. And Ronnie, I have to say, I disagree with the thing that the Whole Foods has already done what it's gonna do. That Whole Foods has been open for 6 months. You know, right now, the whole concept was that we were going to work from the south of town and the north of town and meet somewhere in the middle, and now we've got the town center going on. The last thing we want to do is put a Piggly Wiggly down at our south end. So I don't want to tie our value to what Amazon decides to do, because they're not in the
So
room, we
that's
have
your
no insight.
proposal.
If the best thing that we can do, is the 90% trigger on the name, then I think we need to reach 90% of the current value of the store by a third-party business valuation expert. And I think we have to go through a process where we suggest somebody and they suggest somebody. If we can't agree on who the business valuation person is, then those two have to select that third person. But we have something,
Then the question is, why do we even have 90% in there? If it changes, but it's still best in class, why do you care? So now, can we take out,
who says it's best in class?
well, we're gonna have some parties say, hey,
Well, that's,
but if there's only one in Georgia, this is the #1 store in Georgia, we know it's #2. But they take the first and second and make it Amazon Prime / Whole Foods, or Amazon Prime / WFN, right? And that triggers, I don't know that triggers. But there's only 2 out of 13 that have converted, but it's best in class. It's a winner. So in that, you don't need 90%. So that's almost, if we're gonna do this business evaluation, it doesn't appear that
You don't need the 90, you're
You don't
saying,
need the 90%.
he's proposing that if you're gonna base it on the best in class, you're getting best in class. So what does it matter whether all the other stores have changed their name or not?
Market, it matters, presence in the market. You
So
don't
we're
want to
talking-
be a one-off.
But if it's best in class, then you're actually better than the market. If everybody else
In the
becomes.
market, that you're different from everyone else.
understanding that.
It never worked for me, Dan.
You've come to us asking if the chain changes names in 95% of the stores, or 90%, whatever that percentage is.
Yes.
But now you're talking about them doing something that,
Well, once we started putting a qualifier on it, as far as the quality of the brand, my point is that we were representing the quality of the brand by saying, look, this just happens to be, it's Whole Foods, they're just changing the name, right? Now we're into a different scenario where they're separating brands, and if they do change the name, all you care about is the quality. And I would say right now, if it was only 1 or 2 that got changed to Amazon Prime / WFM, and we came to you, you would go, this is great, and you would approve it. So why don't we represent that test, which is, doesn't matter what the other 90% are or not, if you're getting the best in class, you're getting the best in class. So let's just say, if they change their name, and it's a best in class concept, as we can put it together, I can't, but the attorneys can, then we're all good. It's best in class, you're getting exactly what you want.
Somebody has to tell us that.
yeah.
And we would get a third, and as long as there's a third party, then we would be fine with it.
This conversation is premised on either us having the discretion to make the change or to not. Right?
We're in the not.
You're talking about taking the discretion away from us.
Well, we're talking about a scenario in which we did not come to you and ask you, yes.
Okay, but what we're talking about right now, where the discretion is if they change the name, we don't like it, we can pull the abatement. That's our right as a board. Come to us, we don't like it, we say no, we pull the whole abatement, right? We're talking about taking that discretion away and now giving it to somebody else, and all I'm saying is we have to have somebody tell us whether that's gonna be best in class or not.
I'm good with that. So my proposal was only to keep that, take out the 90% mechanic, because that is just
We're saying you
over.
don't need both.
You don't
If
need
you're gonna do best in
I
class,
agree
you
with this
do
one.
best in
I
class.
understand what he's, okay, I understand what he's saying.
We have a third party verify it.
So I'd be comfortable with what we're saying, as long as a third party to be chosen, however is best to choose, you know.
But you recognize this takes it out of our hands. That's why that
The
90%
whole thing that
trigger.
we've been discussing is taken
I
out.
understand that, but that's why that 90% trigger matters. Is it done, get taken out of our hands until that 90% chain-wide trigger hits. Until then, they still have to come to us for approval.
You're wanting both sides.
I do want both
But the
sides.
only
They
thing,
don't want money for it.
frankly, right now, they could take their Whole Foods name, keep it, and radically change the content so that it's no longer the
There's
same
nothing
price.
we can do
And
about
there's
it.
nothing we can do. I think we're in as good or better shape than if we give them the trigger that says, well, maybe it's if they change their name, and it's, you know, it needs to qualify as.
So
best
there's
in
no,
class.
so
Best in
there's
class.
no downside to there being a 90% trigger on the change. No one said what 90% trigger is, why it's bad.
Well, I think we're all saying that the trigger is okay, and frankly.
He's talking about taking the trigger off the table. He's
Yeah,
talking, My
okay,
question is why?
so if the name changes, and,
He's trying to meet somewhere in the middle.
And I-
You're asking for this 90% trigger, you're asking for this best in class, and he's saying, all right, listen, you know, I'm willing to give here, but meet me somewhere. That's what
but our duty only runs to people. It doesn't run to
Here's what I would say. You don't lose discretion. is that if they change their name, we have to come back here. There has to be a review of this comparison. Is it best in class? And as long as it's still best in class, you guys approve it. But it still comes back to you. We're going to have your appraiser or your, consultant.
Okay.
And that way,
And then if the consultant says it's, 5% below written value, quality or whatever, we have the opportunity to say, well then, there's.
Well, what we've said is 90%, as long as it's no more than 90%.
No, we're not talking about the name now, we're just.
Yeah,
talking
no,
about-
he's still putting
That's
it
about
down.
quality.
The quality,
Yeah.
it has to be at least 90%.
What do you think?
I don't know what to write down. I wrote down all sorts of things.
let me summarize what I heard, which is any name change, the DDA has the right to pull the bond funds, subject to a review by a real estate professional, one chosen by the DDA board, one chosen by us. And the idea is that we would prove that it's best in class, and within 10% best in class to what it was.
I just like to add one additional caveat on there, and that would be that it still is owned and operated by the parent company. What I don't want to see, I like what you just said, but what I don't want to see is them say, hey, we're bringing in Piggly Wiggly as the operator.
No, that's not on the table.
Okay, I just want to make
That's
sure
already-
that
that's
that was.
already in there.
It's already taken
Okay,
care of
all right,
elsewhere.
As long as that's still in.
It can never become Piggly Wiggly.
I was going to add something
I
too.
mean, even if Piggly Wiggly becomes the best in
Well,
class.
please step up here, because me writing this.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
on
like
the
it,
fly.
Piggly Wiggly in
So
my.
I wanted to add one additionally to what you just said, is that you just,
Can you move this up? You're blocking everyone, sorry.
you're just designated two professionals. We're designating a professional, you're designating a professional. If they agree that it's best in class, done. If
What I
they
disagree
disagree,
is the two
they pick somebody else.
That's right. Yep.
That is completely fair, and if you guys will offer me that, I'll be forever.
So the motion should be, if the name changes, and two real estate professionals, one chosen by each party, find that the quality still is best in class, then we have no problem in the abatement stays.
So let's write it in a more positive way.
Yeah.
Let's rewrite
Okay.
it, reword it. Let's, note that discretion is already reserved to the DDA to approve or disapprove name changes as they're brought to us. However, if the real estate developers, experts, whatever we're gonna call them, can come to an agreement that the value of the proposed business will not be less than 90% of what it currently is, then we will not withhold our approval.
I've been hearing best in class. So.
So there's two measures
You
here.
just said valuation, which I was using that.
Which do we want better, best in class or
So,
valuation?
right, so you could have these real estate firms, and brokers, for example, they have strong opinions. about
Right, right, right.
You could ask them to come back and say best in class, or you could ask, and you wouldn't go to a real estate brokerage for business valuation, you go to a corporate.
Right,
So there's
right.
a difference. Another thing I want to talk about is it best in class within the Whole Foods / Amazon universe, or is it best in class within the grocery universe?
Within the grocery.
Grocery universe.
I'm okay with that. I think best in class is better, otherwise we'll spend $50,000 getting it
I
back.
think I'm fine with that as well.
So we want to give the chair the authority to sign based on what we just discussed, based on the name, if the name changes, that an independent, that real estate brokers or real estate professionals, one chosen by each party, must agree that it is best in class. If they do not both agree that it's best in class, they need to choose a third party between them. If that party chooses, identifies that it is in fact best in class, then the DDA will not contest the name change.
Right, and if anything breaks down along the way, like if the two can't agree on the third, then we revert back to the administration.
Okay.
I think whoever's gonna make that determination needs to be defined.
Name?
Well,
Like define now.
a professional designation, is it
Sure.
a broker, is it a CCIM, is it
Okay.
a real estate
I'll
appraiser?
defer to the expertise.
I don't know how to.
Would be
I would say, I don't know, Jeff might be.
There's
I think brokers, because brokers deal with more valuations and sales brokers, so you could cite a national brokerage firm representative. So,
Or we could cite several
Cushman,
national,
yeah, we could.
several national firms that exist right now and have the name on them.
yeah, very.
Unless they change their names.
I don't think about that.
All right.
All I mean by that is I think that the term real estate professional is
Yes.
pretty broad.
Yeah.
So I think
Correct.
that a national firm, I think that designating an appraiser employed by a national firm is one way to do
Okay.
it. But just
Business
saying that
appraiser.
my broker's gonna come give me his opinion is,
Okay.
maybe a bit
So,
subjective.
yeah, let's say a CCIN designated broker from a national firm.
All right, so shall we vote?
So you need a second?
We will need a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Good.
That was easy. 45 minutes. It's only 45 minutes.
Thank you guys for your patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Nothing's gonna change, by the way. We all did this for, no, but thank you very much.
Hold on for 1 second. Do we have any public comment?
Any executive session?
No need for executive session.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Van and Brian?